My name is Paul Rivlin, and I work at the Dayan Center for Middle East Studies in Tel Aviv University. I am an economist, and my work and my teaching is concerned with the economic developments in Middle East countries, stretching from Iran through to Turkey, as far as Morocco, and including Israel. I'm here in Chile to give several lectures, and from here I'm going to Princeton in the United States to give a lecture at a conference. All of these meetings are concerned with recent developments in the Middle East, mainly the issue of the Arab Spring. I think there's a difference in terms of scale. Some of the events have continuity. For example, one war or one source of conflict or one issue is anti-Westernism, a desire to push the West away from its involvement in the Middle East, where the West was the colonial power in different forms for many years. And there's a renewed, different kind of struggle against Western imperialism, as it's called, now much more by Islamic fundamentalists. First it was Al-Qaeda, and now it's the child of Al-Qaeda, which we could call the Islamic State. Another sort of war is the conflict between different kinds of Islam. And this is a conflict that has been going on for a very long time, but for many years in different places it was dormant. It didn't manifest itself in fighting, and today it's very much a source of conflict. So there are wars between Middle Eastern states or Middle Eastern organizations and Westerners, if you like, and all those who support or are deemed to support the West in the region, be it governments that are pro-Western or the State of Israel, which is seen as a creation of the West pushed into the Middle East. And then there are wars that are going on at the same time between different groups in the region, but they've got much more vicious. And one reason is always the availability of weapons, even weapons of possibly of mass destruction, which is a product of technological development over a long time, mainly of course in Western countries. Most people in the Middle East are more religiously observant than they are in Europe or the United States. I don't want to make a comparison with Latin America, but I suspect that that's true even in comparison with this continent. And religion is a source of identity for people who've been ruled by military governments, largely secular military governments that have oppressed them and that haven't provided economic development or political freedom. So it wasn't as if they paid for the lack of political freedom with economic development, but they didn't get either. And so people look to a pre-imperialist world when there was an Islamic empire that achieved great things, and they see that as a source of identity against a hostile, westernized, secular world. And of course this is taken by some to immense extreme. I wouldn't like to say that all Middle Eastern people, all Arabs, all Muslims are fanatics and so on. By no means. But a tiny minority can have a big effect on a majority by disrupting the course of normal life. That's one of the manifestations of religion in the region. Well, the classical secular Arab nationalism associated with Gamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt has weakened as Arab states have failed to unify or to achieve their objectives. One of the things that had a very negative effect on Arab nationalism or pan-Arabism was the fact they couldn't beat Israel. and this led to the idea of an Arab nationalism as opposed to an Egyptian, Jordanian, Syrian nationalism to weaken a lot. There were other factors at work, and with the decline of the Arab nationalism, there's a tendency for alternative sources of identity to be lent on, and one of those is Islam. So you have seen the rise of religiosity in many Arab countries. If you go to Baghdad or Cairo, these were places where women were liberated, where they wore modern dress, where they took part in the political process. And whilst they still take part in the political process, that for sure, their dress and role has become much more traditional. So in that sense, religion has gone and affected political and social life more than in the past. So there's a kind of cycle in which in the middle of the 20th century the countries became more modern, that's a kind of Western judgmental term, and now they've become more religious, which is perhaps not to the liking of Western modernizers. Well, the Islamic State is the most extreme of all the forms of Islam that exists in terms of the intensity of its violence. And it aimed to create a caliphate in the whole of the Middle East and even beyond. A caliphate being a religious empire in which the caliph, who existed hundreds of years ago after the Prophet, was not only the king or the emperor, but he was also the religious ruler. And so the IS is an organization which looks backwards for its inspiration. And I think for social scientists or for many other people in the 21st century, groups that are looking so far backwards for their inspiration are a problem, let's put it with understatement. But they're also misreading the history, because the caliphate that existed 700-800 years ago and was so successful was based on much more tolerance and openness than the caliphate they're trying to create today.